My name is Shannon, and I'm 29 years old. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 2 years now, having just experienced the joy of giving birth for the first time recently. Despite the challenges of parenting and dealing with postpartum issues, the sheer cuteness of my angelic son blows all my fatigue away. Haha, with those big, round eyes, he might just grow up to be a handsome young man. I just can't help but be an over-the-top proud parent, even so soon after his birth. However, despite my happiness, I have a concern. It's the constant visits from my mother-in-law, Nancy. My in-laws live about a 30-minute walk from our house. With my husband, Tom, busy at work and my own parents living far away, Nancy comes over to support me after giving birth. Ideally, her presence should be a blessing, but she hardly ever looks after my son, let alone helps with the housework. She just lies on the sofa, watching drama DVDs she brings with her. Instead, she orders me around, asking for tea or to fetch tissues, as if I'm at her beck and call. Even though she insisted on coming over to help, what kind of support is this supposed to be? Driven to my limits, I've told her that's enough and sent her away, only to be severely scolded by Tom later that evening. Without a doubt, Nancy must have complained to him. Even when I plead to stop because he will make our son crying, Tom's anger is fierce. He's a mama's boy. I wish I could go back and knock some sense into my past self for not realizing this before we got married. He constantly nags me to replicate his mother's cooking or to match my fashion sense to hers, saying, "My mom does it like this." No matter what I say, Tom worships his mother like a goddess, treating me as if I'm a follower in his cult. But I didn't give up and kept discussing the issue with Tom repeatedly. If you could just help out a little, even without relying on your mom, it would make a huge difference. What? I'm exhausted from working all day. Plus, the baby would be happier if you took care of him. Whenever I try to talk to him, his attention is fixed on the TV or his phone, making it impossible to have a real conversation. Doesn't he care about his son at all? And I'm just as exhausted, if not more. With bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep, fatigue, and stress, I glare at Tom. Just so you know, talking to my dad about this is off the table. He's busy too, and I won't stand for any trouble you cause. He briefly looks at me, sternly laying down the law. My father-in-law, John, may be nearing retirement and busy with work, but he's always treated me like a daughter. If he could just speak up against Tom and Nancy, it would be a huge relief. As I reminisce about my conversations with Tom, Nancy's insensitive call snaps me back to reality. "Shannon, the baby's fussing. Come and soothe him now. You're interrupting a good part." She says this without taking her eyes off her drama. I stop folding the laundry and head to my son's side. I stick out my tongue behind Nancy's back, who's engrossed in the TV screen. For me, struggling with parenting and sleep deprivation, the presence of do-nothing Nancy is a significant stressor. But it doesn't matter to my son. Since Tom isn't supportive, I'm all that my child has. Well, I guess I'll be going now. As the clock strikes 5 p.m., Nancy hastily gets up from the sofa. She confidently uses my vanity as if it were her own, getting all dolled up before heading out into the evening. Apparently, she attends a dance class for beauty and health reasons. From the time of our wedding greeting, she had been boasting, "I used to be a model, and I still have a passion for beauty. I guess that's why I always look younger than my age." Nancy is 58, but she does look younger than her age. Still, if she has the energy for hobbies, she might as well go during the time she spends lounging at our house. Grandma doesn't help at all, does she? As I speak to my son cradled in my arms, he softly breathes in his sleep. An hour later, the doorbell rings. It was John who came. Fed up with my mother-in-law's daily behavior, I had secretly consulted with John over the phone, ignoring Tom's warnings. He said he made time to visit because he also wanted to see his grandson, despite his busy schedule. Seeing my sleeping son, John smiled and said, "He's adorable," with a gentleness entirely unlike Tom. So, she didn't help with the housework at all today either, and left for her so-called dance class in the evening? Looking around the messy house, John sighed. It seemed like he had just found out about the dance classes. Seeing the state of the untidy house, he must have realized that she truly hadn't been helping at all. He apologized to me. "It's not your fault," I hurried to say, but he shook his head. My wife insisted she would support you, but this is unacceptable. I'll make sure she doesn't come here from tomorrow on. Also, it seems my son isn't much help, but if you need anything, please tell me. Thank you so much. It seemed John was also worried about Tom's lack of interest in household chores and parenting. Feeling the kindness of someone after a long time, I was on the verge of tears. It's been about 3 months since John visited our home. Thanks to him, she has stopped coming over. I've been feeling much lighter ever since. Just the absence of my mother-in-law has made such a difference in my peace of mind. My son's neck is stronger now, and I've found a bit more ease in caring for him than before. Ah, it's a mess again. Glancing at Tom's half-open room, I sighed. Discarded shirts and socks were balled up on the floor. I threw them into the laundry basket and decided to sweep the floor of his room while I was at it. As I shoved the cleaning tools under the bed, I felt something odd. Did I hit something? Moving the cleaning tools as if to drag something closer, a plastic folder emerged, containing a bank book inside. Such a slob, I muttered. I picked up the bank book and placed it on his desk, then my breath hitched. It was the bank book I had created for my son, not Tom's. Why was it in Tom's room when it's usually kept elsewhere? The bank book for my son only had the money from his birth gifts, but it was a substantial amount. My parents and John had generously contributed for his future. A bad feeling washed over me, and I nervously checked inside the bank book. All the money was withdrawn. On impulse, I opened Tom's drawer and pulled out his bank book. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. Just as I thought. Opening Tom's bank book, I saw that his recent bonus had been completely withdrawn. Noticing the alarmingly low balance, my mind went blank. Even as my son's cries echoed from afar, I was too stunned to rush to him as I usually would. Hours later, when Tom returned from work and I confronted him, he was initially angry that I had gone through his things. But eventually, he confessed. I gave it to my mom. What? Why would you need to support your mom? I can't believe you'd do something like this without telling me. Even dipping into our child's savings. As I pressed him for answers, Tom slammed his hand on the desk in frustration. Mom said she was struggling financially, so I helped her out. She's had her own hardships we don't know about. It's my money anyway. If you have a problem with that, we might as well get a divorce. Tom's outburst woke our son, who had been sleeping in his crib, and he started to cry. I hurriedly picked up my son, comforting him. You earned it? At least the birth gift money isn't yours. My father and your parents gave that for our son's future. Don't you feel the slightest bit sorry? And please, stop mentioning divorce so lightly. Tom snorted disapprovingly at the sight of our son calming down in my arms. Then, he presented a piece of paper on the desk. It's a divorce application. Moreover, the section for the husband is already filled out. I was shocked, and my eyes widened. I don't really care when we divorce, but you wouldn't want to live in poverty with a newborn baby, would you? Ah, so he thinks this will make me keep quiet. My feelings towards my childish husband were rapidly cooling. Come to think of it, I looked down at my son. Tom had never once held him. Seeing me speechless, Tom laughed. As if he was confident that he had the upper hand. That's the situation, so you'll be covering living expenses from your personal account for a while. With a pat on my shoulder, Tom left the room. As the living room door closed, I slumped to the ground, overwhelmed. Tears flowed naturally. My son in my arms reached out to me and smiled innocently. My mind was already made up. The next day, I first submitted the divorce application given by Tom to the court and then took the train. Leaving a note that read, I'll submit the divorce application. I'll follow up with a claim for alimony and the misused money. Along with my wedding ring. My biggest concern was taking my still young son outside, but he looked around curiously and was fortunately in a good mood. I reminded myself to be extra careful with my son's health. My destination was my parents' home. Since I only brought what my son and I needed, along with a few personal valuables, I didn't have much luggage. Having informed my parents the night before, they both welcomed us warmly. They were angry when I told them about Tom and mother-in-law's actions and kindly suggested that I help with the family business while raising my son. My family runs an orchard. It's hard work, but I have some knowledge and experience from helping out since I was a child. I was starting to think that wouldn't be so bad. The next day, while I was finally relaxing, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother-in-law's name. Reluctantly, I answered the call. "What do you think you're doing, Shannon?" The moment I put the phone to my ear, I was greeted by a screeching yell. Annoyed, I responded, "Who are you?" Huh? Taken aback by my changed attitude, Nancy was at a loss for words. As if remembering, I exaggeratedly exclaimed, "Ah. Is that you? I've already divorced your son, so I had completely forgotten about you." My lighthearted response made her voice tremble. "Shannon, do you realize what you've done? How could you just do something like this?" Probably, Tom had cried to her that he never thought I would actually submit the divorce application. I could understand why she'd call in a panic. Me being unreasonable? The problem lies with your son who gave me a filled-out divorce application as a threat without being serious. It worked out well for me, though. My words didn't satisfy Nancy. "I'll forgive you for this, so marry my son again." He's been crying and is still in shock. I wondered if he was still with her. Imagining Tom crying and listening our phone call made me shiver. I was utterly dumbfounded by his audacity to try and fix things through his mother. Enough already. I don't need a mama's boy husband or a mother-in-law who frequents nightclubs. What? Nancy was choking over the phone with surprise, wondering, "How did you know that?" It's clear she reacted to the word nightclub. About the events of last night, after Tom left the living room, I took out my phone. One reason was to inform my parents that I was getting a divorce and returning home. Another was to explain the situation to kind John, to express my gratitude and apologies. That's when John told me everything. The reason Nancy was frequently at my house was to attend a nightclub that opened at 6 p.m. There were various reasons for this, but primarily, my house was closer to the club than her own. Additionally, being at my house during the day allowed her to avoid household chores at her own home. Other reasons included that it was easier to make excuses for coming home late by blaming me or my son, all of which conveniently benefited Nancy. It seems she was infatuated with one of the bartenders and had been spending quite a lot on him. Nancy, who had always been a housewife, couldn't possibly have her own money. Moreover, she can't drink alcohol due to her physical condition. She had been withdrawing money from a John's account, buying drinks for them while she herself drank soft drinks. Prompted by my consultation, John grew suspicious of Nancy. Even after being forbidden from visiting our home, Nancy continued to find excuses to go out. Feeling that something was amiss, John followed her and was shocked to discover she had been visiting nightclubs. He also learned that she had been misusing his money at the same time. To think she would even use my son and grandson's money. If only I had discovered this sooner, I could have prevented this. I'm so sorry to you and my grandson. During our phone call, knowing the situation on my end, John apologized, sounding defeated. "So, you lied to Tom about needing money because you ran out of funds to lavish on the barmen?" At my remark, Nancy fell silent. Over the phone, I could hear Tom's voice, "Mom, you're lying, right?" As expected, Tom was listening in. After a moment of silence, Nancy suddenly erupted in anger. "Don't use such vulgar language. I'm just showing my affection to Jason. He's always happy to see me." Jason must be the name of the bartender. Hearing her painful outburst, I sighed. The thought of my son's money being used for my MIL's entertainment reignited my anger. Neither John nor I will let this go. Be prepared. I ended the call and turned off my phone. This happened a few days later. This time, I received a call from Tom, who offered a sincere apology for the misuse of money and Nancy's behavior. The divorce application was his naive attempt to follow his mother's advice, thinking, if you present a divorce application, she won't be able to say anything, not realizing the seriousness of his actions. Being deceived by his mother, whom he trusted implicitly, and now facing a divorce, Tom seemed to have finally awakened. "I'm truly sorry. I've transferred $20,000 to your account as a gesture of my sincerity, covering the misused funds and for the trouble caused. I hope this shows my sincerity. Let's try to be happy together as a family of 3 again. I only have you, just as you only have me. This felt like a classic Romeo maneuver, and I got goosebumps. There's no chance for reconciliation. I only have my son. I'll be expecting child support from now on. We'll discuss this further with a lawyer involved. I knew that this $20,000 came from money John had advanced. It was from a separate account he had been saving for his retirement, not the one misused by Nancy. From now on, Tom would have to work hard to repay his father and pay child support, under his father's supervision. Tom, believing I would forgive him, was crying and apologizing, but it was all too late. I said goodbye, ended the call, and immediately blocked his number. After finalizing discussions with Tom through a lawyer, 2 months have passed. Now, I'm helping with my parents' orchard and focusing on raising my child. Even after the divorce, I've continued to keep in touch with John. He sometimes visits to see his grandson. From him, I learned that Nancy had even made secret debts. John, who had been preparing for a divorce behind the scenes, mercilessly kicked her out. Now, it seems Tom has reluctantly taken in Nancy, and they are living together. Both Tom and Nancy are working to repay their debts, forced into a life of extreme poverty. Looking into my son's innocent eyes, I'm determined to raise him so he doesn't end up like his father or grandmother.